Alrighty, so I'm a little late to the game tonight. I got distracted doing some other things. I'm a little achy, partly I think from my food choices. It can do me in a little bit sometimes if I'm not careful, and my budget is such that careful isn't in the budget right now, so it'll be what it'll be. Achy, but hopefully I'm on the recover, and I'll be able to get things going for the next few days on some heavy editing to do for videos and the fitness video. And editing is not my favorite part. So it's one of those things where like I did a lot of laundry today and I ran some errands and everything but what I needed to do. So that's sort of where I am right now, is beating myself up a little bit about how I squandered my day. Didn't squander it. I got a lot of things done. But they were things that had low urgency in getting done, whereas the things that I've scheduled for more important consideration, I have sort of not succeeded in doing much on. But at any rate, I need to cultivate the enthusiasm for the projects and get to work on them. The big one right now is the Goblins' daughter and its associated universe. No, that's not it. Okay, so no, that's trying to figure out where I put that file. See if I can pull that open. That's definitely not it. Here, there we go. There we go, and oh, good Lord. Oh, it's the shift in the diet. I got sick earlier today, and the shift in the diet means that it can disrupt my digestive system, and when my digestive system decides it's disrupted, my my energy levels, because I'm not absorbing the food and the nutrients, my energy levels just kind of go. And as a consequence, hey, how did you delete that? You turd. I'm not happy. I know I saved that file before I closed it, but I just reopened it and everything that I saved isn't there. That's super not helpful. All right, that kind of makes me angry. That's bull. I saved that. There we go. So I got 2 copies of it. That just scared the crap out of me. It was about ready to wreck a night for me, is what it was about to do. It's like, I can't believe I just lost several hours worth of work. I didn't, but it certainly felt like that for a minute there, didn't it? All right, so that's that one. Okay, and so where is... That's not where I need to look for... No. Where was that file? It was. See, if I didn't do large clunked together miscellaneous files, this wouldn't be a problem. I have to do better with my sorting system. I may have to go through at some point and just move everything around till they're all fitting in the right area. I was trying to figure out. I did some cleaning up, and that's always a mistake. So looking for, not in the recipes, is it? That'd be a horrible place for a synopsis of writing. Yeah, that's not it. Okay. That's diet and exercise routine. Nope. Make your chores. Henry. New routine. No. Social media. That's not it. All right. So where was it? Where did I have it? Okay. No. It's not in sorcery, is it? Shouldn't be. No, that's horseradish sauce. All right. Nope. Not in arts. That's not right. Is that where it is? Nope. Not in Sound Week. Miscellaneous, perhaps? No, that's not it either. Oh, maybe that's it. Yeah, there we go. Another one of my giant miscellaneous files. Not the best way to do that. All right, so the universe that we're looking at right now, trying to figure out how to give it an identity of its own. I can't call it the Goblins' Daughters universe, because that's the first story in a series about a character, and the Goblin's Daughter scenario is literally just the first story. It's not going to be. Oh, I got this set differently than I wanted to be. Go. All right. The Goblin's Daughter element of the story is the first story in a series about a character, and it doesn't come up as a playing feature in the rest of the series. It's literally just the name of the first story. Sort of like the Hound of the Baskervilles isn't how you refer to all Sherlock Holmes books. You can't make it all about. It can't be the name by which all the other the stories of that character are based, and it certainly can't be what we base the rest of the universe off, because there are several other characters that need to be taken into account. So I need to find an identity for a name for the series that starts with the Goblin's Daughter. And then I've got to find a name for the greater universe that it's set in. And the Goblin's Daughter. I don't know. I mean, it's sort of like if you think about the Dresden Files. That's a universe, but it's also a series. There are no parallel stories within that universe that don't take place in the Dresden Files. And I don't know enough about it to really talk about it, because I haven't read any of the Dresden Files yet. But I feel like The Dresden Files concept is a good potential name for the series about this character. So potentially naming it after the main character. That may be the way to go for the series. The Goblin's Daughter is the book. The character's name, Cases or something like that, would be the series, and the universe, sort of like I don't want it to be like Harry Potter and the Sorcerer's Stone is the name of the book. Harry Potter is the name of the series. The Harry Potter series is the name of the series, and I feel like you can kind of get away with that because each book is sort of like Harry Potter and the Goblet of Fire, Harry Potter and the Prisoner of Azkaban. You can get away with that. But here's the thing. When you have magical beasts and things like that, they're set in the same universe. A lot of people know it as the Harry Potter universe. Some might consider it the Hogwarts universe. Maybe you could go out on a limb and say the Wizarding World series or universe, but it's so heavily based off of the first series being about a character, and I don't want to go that route. I want the universe to be like you could join it with any character, and there were a fair number of them. So unlike the Dresden Files and unlike Harry Potter, these are not all contingent on the story of a given character. Now, Star Wars might be a decent example. Like Star Wars A New Hope, Star Wars and Empire Strikes Back, and Star Wars Return of the Jedi, they're all Star Wars. That's the Star Wars trilogy. If you add the prequels and the new series, they are also Star Wars. The prequels and the original trilogy, they are heavily based on the Skywalker line. So you could almost call them the Skywalker series. And then, like the new trilogy, theoretically not focusing on the Skywalkers, they're still part of the Star Wars series, Star Wars universe. And they involve some of those characters, but they're not the focus of the newer series. I need something that sort of does that. The title of the series, individual series, aren't so beholden to a character. And I mean, oftentimes, when you do a series of series, kind of a universe of series, you have a tendency for an identifying characteristic to emerge onto which you can base the identity of the universe. I'm not sure I want to leave it up to that. That tendency has a way of making it about that feature, and I'm not sure that's the right move for this. All right, so I'm going to get a little more into detail of what I'm doing here in this universe. So we're going to have a character who is the sort of origin of this universe is an adopted boy who makes friends with a classmate, only for that classmate to end up murdered. And trying to figure out how their friend got murdered, they uncover the fact that their friend was aware. I believe that character is either a werepanther or a werewolf. I'd have to go back and look through my notes. I think I went with a wolf. And the main character doesn't know that there's this supernatural element to the world. He's a normal human as far as he's concerned, and everybody around him thinks the same way. Nobody knows any of this stuff goes on in the background. And as he uncovers that she was his friend was not a necessarily a human, it starts to do things to him that make it clear that maybe he's not. Where was I on that? The character's awareness of killing the signal. Why do you do that? I guess we'll just find out. We'll find out if this is still recording. If it's not, it's not. All right. Whatever it is, it is. At any rate, the main character is going to find out that he doesn't belong to either of the two worlds, and key things that he should have done to fit into one or the other, he never did. And so the question becomes, is he an outsider? And are there advantages to being an outsider? And do any of those things help him solve the murder of his friend? So that's the main story. And the main story of that character takes place over several books, in which the character encounters several spirits, vampires that are holding spirits as power batteries, things they drain for power, wares who have a tradition and a way of being that he was never inducted into, and so he's not a part of that culture, and they are sort of skittish about him because he's not one of them. And so you have the ghost, the vampire, and the were aspect of it, and then the human world in which they all kind of hide. And so moving from there, you have, well, actually, sort of in the background of that setting are a group of people who hunt down and destroy monsters. And some factions within that organization potentially are targeting anybody that's different from human. So what we have here are multiple factions, each with their own story setting. I think one of the things I talked about last night that are potentially important to talk about again is that in this setting, you're going to have villainous wares, villainous vampires, villainous ghosts or spirits, and villainous hunters. But you're also going to have good people on all those sides as well. And telling those stories in their own setting about their own situations means that I'm going to have a series about hunters. I'm going to have a series about ghosts and spirits. I'm going to have a series about vampires. I'm going to have a series about wares. And now that I've played with this a little bit further, there was a story I had about skinwalkers. mythology has skinwalkers as people who have the ability to wrap themselves in the skins of animals and take an animal form. And I have the story of skinwalkers and how a skinwalker character comes into conflict with a hunter. So again, we're touching on the hunters, but there wasn't really a crossover between the skinwalkers and the wares and the vampires and the spirits. So it felt like it was trying to force itself into that universe, but there are ways to reconcile it so that it actually fits and makes sense. And so I've got now skinwalkers, wares, vampires, spirits, and hunters. And as a part of that universe, you have a kind of a schism in the hunter category, so that some of them may be identified as a different group, the slayers instead of the hunters or something like that. And then examining that world a little bit further, I'm looking into the fact of like, okay, so where do all these factors come into play? And you look at the spirit realm and spirit guides and spirit animals and those types of things, and the question of ghosts and spirits and the question of afterlife and whatnot tends to lead to questions of heaven and hell. And so there may be stories on that regard. And so figuring out the nature of heaven and hell in this setting brings up the question of, divinities. And I've sort of wandered into the area of using a sort of Titanomachy, Titanomachy, I believe that's how you say it. It's the story of the Olympian gods overthrowing the Titans. And the Titans were the more primal gods before the Olympians overthrew them. And if you look at things like that, if you look at those mythologies, if you look at the Celtic mythology, you have like the Firbolg, and then the Fomorians, and then I might have those reversed. I always mix them up. And then the Tothdadan, and then the Celts. And there are a series of invasions and wars. And with that same concept in mind, I feel like building a pantheon of divinities that overthrows the previous pantheon of divinities has room for, you could do sort of like the Elder Gods, a Cthulhu-style mythos, where people sort of connect with the primal proto-titans rather than the Olympians or things like that. But there's also the room for the idea that if you can have a generation of gods come up and overthrow the previous gods, then you have the potential for, I guess we'd call them new gods, the emergence of new gods on Earth or in the realms. Maybe that's something I need to think about for the name, is the realms, something about the realms. And so you're going to have new gods, old gods and their disciples, or the high gods, I guess we would call them, and their champions and disciples. And then the ancient ones the primal ones, the primal gods, and those who seek to draw them back for chaos and destruction. And so that's part of the setting. And some of the aspects that lays into position bring in the idea of the new gods, the old god, the high gods, and the primal gods, the champions and the disciples, or neophytes, or however you want to term them, and their relation to all the other spiritual beings. And then into that mix, we're going to have the Fae, so goblins and elves and fantasy creatures, and their pocket dimensions. And their pocket dimensions are part of what separates them, but they also have a connection to magic and glamour and those types of things. And that connection is something that you can also do, like different ways of accessing some of those forces are ways in which you can introduce wizards, sorcerers, and like the main character of the Goblin's daughter, where her introduction to that universe is somebody's belief that she's a sorceress, but she's just a stage magician. And so you've got that aspect. And there's room. I'm not sure I'm ready to shoehorn it in there, but there's room in that concept of magic abilities bestowed on the Fae and the creatures in that realm. If there's something parallel among humans, it gets you sort of into a realm of psionics or psychic powers, as we might define them, as somebody else might define them as magic, and they're not necessarily different. They're just flavors of the same thing or facets of the same gem. And so the ability to have people with psychic or mental abilities that can augment them and give them special powers can lead to superhero fiction mixing with it. And so that may drastically increase the size of this universe. So it's sort of interesting to try to figure out, and I don't want to necessarily call it like realms of magic or something like that, because that makes sense for werewolves and skinwalkers and well, it makes more sense for the Fae and the wizards. Realms of magic could be Fae and wizards. Werewolves could be werewolves, vampires, skinwalkers, ghosts, could all be spirit realms. And god realms or realms of divinity could be the new gods, the high gods, and the elder gods and their relationship to everything. And that sort of plays on it. And hunters and humans, as they interact in that realm, could be the mortal realm. I just feel like I feel like it would be fun to build a superhero universe that starts in and has connections to this greater universe. I just feel like magic superheroes have never been my favorite aspect of superhero settings. Realms. So I got to play around with the concept of realms. Or, yeah, I'll just go look up through a thesaurus and see if there are any other words or phrases that are similar to realms, and then see if there's a word, like it's probably going to be an adjective like mysterious or amazing or wondrous. Like that might be the way to go. Like the old pulp magazines had amazing stories and weird stories or stories of tales of wonder or things like that. So maybe doing realms of wonder or amazing realms as the overall identity of the story universe. I'll have to think about that. And do I really want to chunk in the superhero aspect to this universe? I really have to figure out some of that. So we've got and there's also a chunk of the story in there that since we're dealing with secret divinities, secret fae, secret sorcerers and wizards, secret divinities, I think I said the secret vampires, secret werewolves, secret skinwalkers, secret hunters, secret sandmen. There feels like there should be a sort of a Men in Black, Warehouse 13 element added to this. And so I sort of figured out a way to do that. But I've also connected it to like the legends of the Lady in the Lake. And it has connections to the Fae and the hunters and the Sandmen, which I don't think I mentioned. The Sandmen are sort of like people who have a connection to the realm of dreams. And so they're sort of like sorcerers. But they're also sort of like the Fae. So it's very convoluted, but when they started to weave themselves together, they really started to weave themselves together. So I got to figure out I do think I need to play around with the concept of the realms. I don't know that I want to go back through and do like I'll see. One of the things I need to look up is the 9 realms of Norse mythology. I think it's 9. Yeah. And so I don't want to make them direct parallels to the 9 realms. But that does make for a really clean title, the 9 realms. I don't think I want to do that as the title for this universe. But I need to try to figure out how to distinguish each series by name and set each series within the greater universe of the realms. So you're going to have heaven and hell, dream realm, the Fey realm, and the mortal realm. Sort of. I think that sort of makes a certain amount of sense. All right, so I have to really sit down and think about this, and I don't know that I'm going to be able to brainstorm a lot more right now. So I might, not while I'm shooting this video. I do think sometimes chatting about some of this clears some things up. Like, I really do think that the better choice would be the new gods, the high gods, and the primal gods. That trinity makes the most sense for the naming characteristics within this universe. That came to me while I was sitting here chatting about it. So I do come up with some good ideas that way. I think the parts I'm going to have to sit here and research and draw diagrams and contemplate, I don't know that that's going to make scintillating conversation while I'm doing it. I tend to get very quiet and contemplative. And so you're just going to be staring at me thinking and doodling for like 10 minutes. So I think we're almost at 40 minutes anyway, so I might just call it here. And I will be back tomorrow night. I'm not really doing the 8:30 p.m. stuff right now. I'm going to focus on trying to get the fitness video up, and I'm going to work on the video editing videos. And then I have to contemplate the recipe videos. And I hate to think about it because I want to believe that I will be able to do those videos. But that's partly contingent on my budget over the next few days. So I'm hoping to see something positive in my budget, some money come in, and that could make it easier for this going forward. But we shall see. We shall see what happens. I'm going to call it here for the evening. I thank anybody who's joined me on this little adventure, and I will see you tomorrow. Take care and have a good night. I think I'm